All right, let's talk about Hothouse Earth. Article, my wife found it. She's forwarded it to me. Not remarkable, fairly typical, actually, the kind of stuff we're getting right now. Came out in LiveScience, a journal I've never heard of. They're popularizing science, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. They're popularizing science, and Bloomberg does the same thing. I read an article on here from Bloomberg, I think yesterday. So, popularizing science, LiveScience, LiveScience.com. You can look this up. I did not put the URL in the description. I will do that. But here it is on the screen. You can't see that because I haven't done the right thing. There you go. Here it is on the screen, and I will put the URL in the description if you want to follow along. But we're gonna go through this. I have some things to say about this. Some of this is fine. Some of this is bullshit, and it's always going to be the case because it's in the popular science. It's in the popular journal. There used to be a journal called Popular Science, and they try to make science accessible to the lay audience. Is that the right word? Lay audience, the non-technical, non-scientific audience. Fine, that's great. That's awesome. So this is Popular Science, little p, little s, not the journal, because the journal is LiveScience. So this is popularizing science, and they're talking about tipping points. And if you've been in this space very long, the climate space, the global heating space, then you'll know about tipping points. It's become a big bugaboo for, I don't know, 10 years, maybe not quite, maybe 6 or 7 years. I think may have even got introduced, so maybe it has been more like 10 years, back at with the signing of the Paris Climate Accords and the IPCC report that came out just ahead of that. So this has been around a while, and it's working its way. Tipping points is not really a scientific term. It doesn't really have a place in science. It has a place in policy. And the policy is pretty simple. The idea here is to manage global heating up to a point of danger and then stopping there. So we want as much business as usual as we can afford, okay, without having climate impacts. So we want as much business as usual as we can afford up to a point. And when we reach that point, we want to stop. And I'm using the word point. There's a point. It's like a guardrail, all right? There's a point you reach. We want to stop doing this. If you're in a car and you're going down the road and you're about to go through a guardrail, you're supposed to stop. Put your brakes on, right? So there's a tipping point. There's a point that you go through this guardrail, then you go over a cliff. And so all this talk about tipping points, this has all been introduced because we're trying to work through the politics and the economics and the spiritual considerations and the fairness and the equity and all this monkey business that we have to do every time we want to do any fucking thing, okay? Including not go over a cliff with equity, trans rights, all this stuff we have to do. All of which makes sense, except in this context of going through a guardrail and over a cliff. If you're going through a guardrail and over a cliff, you should, I don't know, modest suggestion, stop. Stopping is probably a good idea. Yeah, if you have all these other things you have to do, still, you need to stop first. So, in policy, they're looking at guardrails. In policy, what the policymakers want to know is, how long can I ignore this? I'm being mean here, but this is what it is. How long can I ignore this problem, personally, in terms of my political career? How long can I ignore this problem without plunging humanity over a cliff into a chasm and me getting blamed for it? So, can I retire first? Is the tipping point, is the point of going through the guardrail 40 years out? I need a number here. I'm a politician. I'm an economist. I'm whatever. And I'm an academic, right? I'm a college professor, and I need a number where I can continue to pretend that this isn't a problem. But beyond that number, beyond that point, 40 years out, 20 years out, whatever it is, I get blamed because I'm there. And if I'm still a politician and an economist and a college professor and a researcher, a climate scientist. And we have just gone over a cliff, and we're now headed into the chasm, and people are screaming and crying and pointing fingers and wondering whose fault this is. And I'm still in office. I'm still an economist. I'm still making economic projections, and we just went through a cliff. Then I get blamed. When the finger pointing starts, whose fault is this? It gets pointed at me. So they want to know when they have to bail out. This is all about policy. All this tipping point bullshit is not science. It's policy. And they want to know when they have to bail out, what point they have to bail out. And so there's all this talk about tipping points. And it's so irresponsible. You're headed at speed to a guardrail. You've lost control of the vehicle. Actually, you never had control. I mean, we're talking about the Earth dynamic system here. When was the last time we had control of the Earth dynamic system? I don't know. Never. So we never had control. So we're not in control of this. All we know is that, or we suspect, or we have some data to suggest, we're headed for a guardrail. Right over there. See that? You see that point out there? If this happens, if we go over 2 degrees C, temperature increase globally above a pre-industrial baseline, if we go over 2 degrees C, then we're fucked. Okay? And everyone's, of course, looking at the thermometer. Did we go over 2? Did we go over 2? Did we go over 2? And until we go over 2, it's business as usual. Full speed ahead. Well, that's not how guardrails work. If you see there's a guardrail, and beyond that there's something terrible, you assume it's terrible, there would be a guardrail, right? There's a cliff. There's a cliff. If you go over that guardrail, you're going over a cliff. You're going to die. You're going to be torn to pieces if you go through that guardrail. And if you see a guardrail right in front of you, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to stop. You're not supposed to run right up to the guardrail and hope that everything works out. Oh my God, are the brakes good? Is it a gravel road? Am I going to slide? You don't do all those things. You stop well short of the guardrail. I'm making a big deal out of this because I want you to understand what this is. I want you to understand what this talk is all about. It's about doing nothing. This talk about guardrails is about doing nothing until you get to the guardrail. And then having a conversation about what to do. Like, put on the brakes. Well, probably you should have put on the brakes 200 feet back. Not when you're bumper to the guardrail. Then it's too late. But that's what they're doing. That's what this is about. This is justifying doing nothing. Even though you know you must do something to not go through the guardrail. They're using the guardrail being not up against our bumper to suggest they have nothing to do. So let's look at this article. I'm already fired up about this. Do you get this? Did you get that? How angry I am? So let's do this. Oh, and this isn't the only bunch of people doing tipping points and guardrails, okay? Johan Rockstrom has his set. He's got 9. Where did he come up with 9? I could talk about that too. The psychology of the number 9. But we won't go there. I'm just saying that everybody's doing this now. This is a meme. This is now a climate change meme. And you're going to hear more about this. Vital signs, and tipping points, and guardrails, and points of no return. You're going to hear all about this because they're trying to prepare you for the idea that you do nothing until later. Until you're bumper to the grill, like up against the guardrail. Moving on. So Earth's systems, and I talk about Earth system dynamics a lot, so we're on message here. Earth's systems are nearing tipping points that could plunge the planet into a hothouse regime. But there's still time to prevent that from happening, scientists say. Well, we'll see about that, won't we? So I'm going to read this. You can follow along. You can also follow the link in the description and read it yourself. Without deep cuts to emissions, there's a chance Earth could embark on a dangerous hothouse trajectory to complete climate chaos. So what is a hothouse trajectory? They're saying that, and this is true, that you don't get a hothouse Earth immediately. We are creating conditions that will lead to a hothouse Earth. What's a hothouse Earth? I don't know what the definition is. Maybe 5 degrees C above pre-industrial baseline. But I know from past research that has been shared that the Earth has gotten as hot as 10 degrees C. This happened in the past. 10 degrees C anomalously high above whatever the baseline temperature was at the time. So the PETM, Paleocene Eocene thermal maximum. The PETM was one such, and that is associated with some extinctions. It is considered one of the great extinction events, the PETM, and it was caused by temperature. So the planet has been there before. We are going there again. And complete climate chaos. Whatever. Someone's being florid here. That's one takeaway from a new report that found 22 of Earth's 34 vital signs are flashing red, signaling that the planet is in distress. So 22 of 34 is about 2 in 3. So 2/3 of the planet's vital signs are flashing red. Planet is in distress. If you went to the doctor, you walked into the emergency room, I'm not feeling good, and they took your blood pressure, they took your pulse, and they took your body temperature, and 2 of those 3 things were suggesting that you have a serious problem. You had a high temperature and your pulse was really racing, okay? Then they might say, oh, yeah, we got to check you in. We don't know what's wrong with you, but you got a really high temperature and your pulse is racing and you could die right here standing where we are, okay? So we're not going to let that happen, and then they check you in and then they try and save you. If 2 of the 3 things they check are in the red. So this is 22 of 34. Johan Rockström uses 9, but if you look at his work, it's about the same. He will tell you that 2 out of 3 of his 9 are also in the red. So this is a theme that we're looking at the Earth like a doctor looks at a patient, someone who's just walked in the door, basically. And of the vital signs that we can measure and that we care about, 2/3 of them are basically off the chart. They're not normal, not nominal, not acceptable. We're going to check this patient into a room and find out what's wrong with them, if it was a person. Earth's vital signs are markers of planetary health. Okay. I don't like that, but we'll roll with that. Such as atmospheric carbon dioxide and methane concentrations, ocean heat content, sea level fluctuations, and the yearly percentage of extremely hot days relative to a 61 to 1990 average. Okay, that's a bullet list. Probably should have been a bullet list. It would be easier to read. Nobody cares about any of those things. Nobody cares about carbon dioxide concentrations. Nobody cares about methane concentrations. Most people don't know what methane is. Nobody cares about ocean heat content. What is that? I know what the ocean is, but I don't know what the rest of that means. No one knows what sea level fluctuations are. And nobody knows what this long sentence, no one's going to even read this sentence. Yearly percentage of extremely hot days relative to the 1961 to 1990 average. Nobody knows what that means. So for a magazine, LiveScience, that's trying to popularize climate research, this whole thing is basically a failure. Most people, even a learned audience who would pick up LiveScience, who would go to this website and start reading articles, most people who would read this would have no comprehension of what this is about. I would say that is by design. They get to publish this paper without any expectation that it's going to register with anybody, least of all politicians, economists, and Joe Average voter. All right. Most of these markers, 34, hit record levels in 2024 and 2025. Looks like it's on the same trajectory. 2025 isn't over, right? According to the report published today, October 29th, in the journal Bioscience. So LiveScience is carrying this, but the original article showed up in Bioscience. And if you want to read this article and find this link, you can go there. I'm not going to bother. Here's a quote. This report is both a warning and a call to action. Co-lead author William Ripple, a distinguished professor of ecology at Oregon State University, told LiveScience in an email. So they were interviewing one of the principal authors of this paper, which was published in Bioscience. 2024 was the hottest year ever recorded in modern times. There you go. Data. Are we data-driven here or are we not? Got some data for you. 2024 was the hottest year ever recorded in modern times. Man, that just might be 100 years, right? Oh, well, in terms of temperature, it could even be 300 years. Still, it's a long time. It's not your lifetime. It's not my lifetime. It's modern times. and likely the warmest in at least 125,000 years. So likely because they're having to look at what they call proxy data, so tree rings, ice cores, things like that, which, by the way, sounds wonky and weird. And why would you get temperature data from a tree ring? But they can do that. Scientists can do that. They figured it out. And then they share their data with other scientists, and they look at it, and they hem and they haw, and they stroke their beards, and yeah, that looks pretty good. And then they go out and they try and replicate their results. Scientific method, okay? Then they go out and they try and replicate their results. It's like, okay, it still holds. And so now they know something. And so, yes, while it's the hottest year ever recorded in modern times, probably using thermometers, as you can guess, it's also likely the warmest in at least 125,000 years. Ocean heat and ice loss hit record highs. That's true. Oceans have never been hotter. And ice loss is really scary. Ice loss means ice is melting. And, the Swiss Alps are losing their ice. The sea ice in the Arctic is largely gone by the end of summer. And even when it comes back in the winter, which is what you'd expect, it's not nearly the same ice as what was there before. There's no multi-year ice, for example, in the Arctic anymore. There's very little. Multi-year ice is ice that has been able to freeze without thawing for many years. But the situation up there is so hot now that it will freeze in the winter and then it melts in the summer and it's basically gone. And then it freezes in the winter, it melts in the summer. So it's not multi-year ice. It's freezing in the winter and it disappears in the summer. And that's a sign that the temperature regime is too hot to maintain multi-year ice. And that's critical. Because at some point, just connect a couple dots here. At some point, it becomes hot enough not to have summer ice at all. None. It's all gone. And at some point, it might even be hot enough to not have any winter ice. It just never forms. There's no ice in the Arctic. And in the past, say 125,000 years ago, there was no ice in the Arctic or on the continent of Antarctica. There was no ice. Ice-free. The planet was ice-free. Now, of course, when the ice melts, the water runs into the oceans, which is where all water goes eventually. Sea level was 270 feet higher. I think that's like 90 meters. 70 meters? A lot, okay? 270 feet higher. Sea level was 270 feet higher than it is today. Because all that ice that we're talking about is on land. It's not in the water. So what's on land, it's not in the water. The sea level is lower than it is when that ice ends up in the water. And then it adds to sea level height. Sea level rises. So sea ice loss is a big deal. Global surface temperatures exceeded 1.5 degrees C above pre-industrial levels for the first time over a 12-month period in 2024. We also saw record wildfire activity and the most widespread coral bleaching event in recent history. So that's all a quote from the lead author. So no one really cares about coral bleaching events. No one even knows where the coral is, can't find it on a map. But people are certainly interested in wildfire activity. Wildfire activity will mess you up, okay? Wildfires can destroy everything. And I did a video on the insurance industry talking about its particular set of problems. And one of the problems they're having is wildfire activity. And wildfire doesn't always mean just out in the wilderness. Maybe it starts in the wilderness. It doesn't stay in the wilderness. So wildfire can burn cities, towns, neighborhoods, and that means there's insurance payouts. And they're really concerned about things like wildfire activity as these are pegged to global heating. Scrolling down through the ads, Ripple and his colleagues first laid out the framework to measure Earth's vital signs in 2020. So your doctor has a framework to measure you when you walk into the emergency room. I just mentioned some of that, right? Take your bodily temperature, take your pulse, weigh you, get your weight, check your blood pressure. That's a framework. And and maybe ask you a couple of questions. So that's a quick data collection. It's a framework for assessing you. And then they decide, do we need to assess you more? Do we need to check you into the hospital? Or do we need to just sit you down and see if you feel any better later? So Ripple and his colleagues first laid out the framework to measure Earth's vital signs in 2020. So this is how we're going to measure it. 5 years on, the researchers warned that we could cross a series of tipping points and push the planet into self-sustaining hothouse regime, a state where Earth continues to heat up massively even after carbon emissions drop significantly. So the researchers warned that we could cross a series of tipping points. Let's not talk about tipping points right now. Let's just bring this down to this particular statement here. A self-sustaining hothouse regime, a state where Earth continues to heat up massively even after carbon emissions drop significantly. This is critical. This is where everyone dies. This causes massive societal change. This causes a collapse of civilization, complete collapse. And this causes a massive fatality event. Possibly 99 people out of 100 don't survive this. And that sounds off the hook, weird, strange, why you say things like that. That's what they're worried about. Even after carbon emissions have dropped significantly. This is something you don't see very often. I have been noticing a trend that I do not approve of, because it's unproven for one thing, but it's also probably wrong, which is that on the day that we stop burning fossil fuels, the planet will start to cool. That is not how physics works, people. Physics does not work that way. If you have a pot of hot water on the stovetop and you suddenly turn off the heat, does that pot of hot water cool off? No, it doesn't. You won't notice a change in the temperature of that hot water for a long time. It might be 10, 15, 20 minutes, and then finally it starts to cool off. And the planet Earth is a quadrillion times bigger than your pot of water. And once you get it to a certain temperature, how long is it going to take that thing to cool off? Not years, not decades, not centuries. It's going to be thousands of years before you notice any cooling trend on the planet after you've heated it up. So this whole idea that the planet is going to start to cool, or that the temperature won't continue to increase, this is completely wrong, and this is very misleading. And I don't know why Michael Mann keeps talking about this, and it really pisses me off. He needs to shut the fuck up, okay? What this guy's saying is that the Earth continues to heat up massively, their words, even after we stop burning fossil fuels. So if we continue to screw around with the Earth dynamic system, it is suddenly in the driver's seat. We are not. And we can scramble around, throw the brakes on, try and jump out of the car, whatever we're going to do. But when we go through that guardrail, we go over the cliff. That's how physics works. It doesn't work another way. And this playing chicken with the Earth dynamic system and thinking you're just going to run up to the guardrail and go over and stop before you go over, that's not how it works. Earth is now 2.2 degrees Fahrenheit, 1.2 C. I have to use the centigrade, okay? Earth is now 1.2 degrees C warmer than it was on average between 1850 and 1900. And if countries don't, 1.2 C doesn't sound like much, but when taken over the entirety of the planet, it's cataclysmic. For one thing, it's an average. Just to give you an example of how averages don't apply here. If your head is in the freezer, but your feet are in the oven, you're fine. Really? Really? Is that how we're going to do this? No, we're not going to do this that way, okay? There are going to be some places on the Earth that warm faster than others, and some places that don't warm hardly at all, and some places like the ocean that warm slowly. And so taking an average of all that is stupid. It's dumb. It's a dumb thing to do, and it's a dumb thing to report. There were only 1.2 degrees C above a pre-industrial baseline from 1850 to 1900, which, by the way, is not pre-industrial. You probably should go back to 1750 and 1800, but nevertheless, fine, we'll go with what they've got. And we're now 1.2 degrees C warmer than that, but that's the average. That's the planetary average. And, your head is in the freezer and your feet are in the oven. On average, you're fine. You're doing really well. This is bullshit. You just peg your bullshit meter. And every time they talk about the global average, you should just say, yeah, okay, fine. But tell me what the worst is. Let's not talk about the average. I'm not living in average land, USA, okay? I'm not living in the average place on Earth. I'm living in a place on Earth that's probably getting the shit beat out of it. So just tell me what it's like. Tell me what I have to deal with when the shit comes to beat me up, okay? Just tell me how it is when not where I am. I don't want to hear about the average. That should be your attitude. You should care what harm is coming for you, not what the average is for some average guy living in average land where you can't even find on a map. Pisses me off. Earth is now 1.2 degrees C warmer than it was on average between 1850 and 1900, and if countries don't enact any further climate policies, which is a scenario often described as the cost of inaction, whatever, as soon as they mention policies, you should become very suspicious. The planet could reach up to 3.1 degrees C of warming above pre-industrial levels by 2100. Okay, there's so much wrong with that. Oh my God. For one thing, we're not at 1.2 degrees. We're actually closer to 2. Now, it could drop down. That's fine. But we're knocking on the door of 2 degrees C above pre-industrial baseline. That's just data. All right? That's the data. If you don't like the data, go fuck yourself. When will we reach 3 degrees C? I don't know, 2030, 2012, 2032, 2035. Not the year 2100. Why would they use the year 2100? Because that's so far out in the future, you don't give a fuck. Nobody gives a fuck. The year 2100, we'll have flying cars by then, right? We'll have nuclear fusion. We'll be living on Mars and on the moon. I'll be able to take a Uber taxi to the moon by the year 2100. So you're thinking, no, I don't care about any of this. Plus, I'll be dead, and my grandkids will be doing all these things, and I don't care. And besides, if it is warm, and my grandkids have to deal with it, they'll have a whole lot more technology. And besides, I don't care about my grandkids. They don't even send me Christmas cards at Christmas time. So why do I care about them? If they get 3 degrees C, my grandkids and maybe my great grandkids, I don't give a fuck about them either. I'll be dead. I'll be worm food by then. I don't even care. So by telling you, and it's always this suspiciously rounded number, right? The year 2100. Why couldn't it be the year 2051? Did you calculate this number or you just pull it out of your ass? Well, the latter, obviously. And they pulled it out of their ass that far in the future so you don't have to think about it. It's like another guardrail. It's like a guardrail for a guardrail. We have all these tipping points, all these guardrails that we're not going to cross. Oh, and by the way, we have until 2100, the year 2100, to not cross them. None of this matters. Nothing here matters. This whole paper is irrelevant because none of this stuff matters until the year 2100 when we go through some imaginary guardrail. And it's my great-great-great-grandchildren that do it. Such rapid change would mark a turning point in the Holocene, a stable period that Earth entered about 11,000 years ago, after the last ice age, scientists wrote in the report. All right, Michael Mann did some work with the so-called hockey stick, and we have not been in a stable period since the 1970s. We left the Holocene. The stable period, geologists, because they get to name the periods, the stable period that geologists are calling the Holocene is dust. And they're already coming up with a new one. And the geologists who own the naming, they haven't bought on to this yet. And the new name for the current period, where we're completely fucking up, is called the Anthropocene. I think that's a bit egocentric to name it after us. Sorry, that's my phone. I should have turned it off. Maybe I will in a minute. The Holocene is over. No, we left the Holocene behind. We're out of the Holocene. We don't know what we're in for, but we're out of the Holocene. And so that's done and dusted. Scholars argue that this period of relative climatic calm enabled the development of agriculture, permanent settlements, and the rise of human civilizations. They wrote, that stability is now giving way to a period of rapid and dangerous changes. Now, that's an interesting juxtaposition. Now, I want you to think about this. If we are now entering a period of rapid and dangerous change, then what does that say about our agriculture, settlements, and the rise of human civilizations? Because those were made possible, argued that this period, and those were enabled by the relative climatic calm of the Holocene, which has been dust since the 1970s. So what does that say about agriculture, settlements, and human civilizations? Nothing good. Your agriculture, your permanent settlements, towns, cities, right? And your human civilization, basically it's global civilization now, they're finished. We're out of the Holocene. Everything that allowed us to do what we do now, 24/7, balls to the walls, is over. We can maybe figure out how to do what we do now differently, but we're not doing that. We're not looking at doing these things differently. We're doing things the old-fashioned Holocene way. You know, tractors and fertilizers and monoculture seeds and massive industrial agriculture and industrialized cities, industrialized roads and freeways. And okay, thanks to the Holocene and all the calm and stability. And now, well, we're going through some rapid and dangerous change. So you can't have those things. Soaring global temperatures considerably increase the risk of crossing climate tipping points, such as the collapse of polar ice sheets and the melting of carbon-rich permafrost. Nobody cares. Nobody alive. Nobody on the planet cares about that. Not even the scientists studying the permafrost. They don't care. They're paid to study the permafrost. They got grants. They got graduate students. They're going to write a paper, and they're going to study the permafrost, and they don't give a flying fuck if it melts. Nobody cares about either of these things. No one cares about the polar ice sheets. Nobody. They care that they're there because they can write a grant and go up and study them with their graduate students and their boats and their planes and their computers and their satellites and everything else. But do they actually care that the polar ice is going to collapse? No. Well, as long as it doesn't collapse during their career, because then they won't have anything to study, or they'll have to pick something else to study, or they'll have to write the papers about why the polar ice collapsed. So you could get a lot of mileage out of that. You could probably write 10 years worth of papers on just why it happened. So they don't really care. Nobody cares. Nobody gives a fuck. Trust me on this. No one gives a flying fuck about any of these topics. That's important if these are guardrails. If these are the guardrails that we're supposed to stop short of before we go over the cliff, and we don't care about these guardrails, are we going to stop short and not go over the cliff? Of course not. Of course not. We're just going to keep doing business as usual. Because what is business as usual? Business as usual is I have a professorship. I have a elected seat in government. I have a grant. I have a paycheck. I have my car, and I drive to Starbucks. And I get a latte every morning. And I have graduate students. My kids are going to college, and we go to vacation in Disneyland in Florida twice a year. And I go to the COP conference. This time it's in Brazil. And I'm going to fly out there. And they're going to have great meals, and we're going to have a great time. And then we're going to go home. We're going to write a paper, and I get a new grant. And every year I get new graduate students, and I have a mortgage, and I have a great life, and I have a pension, and everything is all business as usual. And I don't give a fuck. No fucks given about any of this. No fucks of any kind. Not the slightest, not a tiny fuck given about any of this. So long as I can stay in business. It's all business. No one gives a fuck. If these systems disintegrate, both the amount of solar energy that Earth bounces back to space and the quantity of carbon it can store plummet, thus locking in further warming and causing additional systems to collapse. So this is like the domino idea. And I don't have anything bad to say about this, I guess. Albedo effect, Earth bouncing things back into space, the energy that Earth bounces back into space, the albedo effect. Yeah, once we lose the ice, then we don't reflect as much sunlight back into space, and that increases in an unexpected way, meaning out of the blue, increases in an unexpected way global heating. The heating of the Earth could jump up. Nobody cares. There are people studying how to prevent the ice from melting, how to return the ice, how to rebuild the ice. And some of the ideas are completely unhinged, just like wacky mad scientist crap, okay? And the quantity of carbon that can be stored, there's some wacky mad scientist crap about this, that they're going to return that around. And God, it just gives me a goddamn headache. All right, here's another quote. Crossing one tipping point could set off a cascade of other tipping points, Ermagerd, with the majority of interactions being destabilizing. Okay, so it only goes downhill. You start going through guardrails, then you're going through guardrails. And that's what you're doing now. You're going through guardrails. Ripple and his colleagues wrote, in the worst case, this could push the climate system onto a hothouse Earth trajectory, meaning that's where you're going. You just went over a cliff, and at the bottom of that cliff, and probably all the way down, is called the hothouse Earth trajectory. Nice. We're going to all be living in a 10 degrees C above baseline world. Not living, of course. You can't live in that world. What can you do in that world? 10 degrees C above baseline. What can you do in a hothouse Earth where you can't grow crops and there's no standing water on the surface and you can't even come above ground for more than 6 hours a day and then only at night? What can you do on that planet? You can't live there. You can die. And that's what you do, because that's all you can do. In the worst case, this would push the entire climate system onto a hothouse Earth trajectory. This trajectory would lead to a fundamentally different planet with devastating impacts on natural systems and humanity. Devastating is not the word I would use. Devastating. I went gambling at Las Vegas, and I lost a lot of money and I'm devastated. Okay, but you're still alive. And you're broke. But you still got your job. You probably still have your 401k. So you lost a lot of money, you feel stupid, you can't face your wife, and so you're devastated. You probably end up with a divorce, but you're still alive. I'm not sure that devastating is the word I would use here. How about fatal? How about murderous? How about life terminating? Okay, there's a lot of words we could use here that would be much, much closer to the actual event. Devastating is not the word I would use. The hothouse pathway is one of the 4 most urgent climate risks that the researchers identified in the report. Actually, it's not one of the 4. It is the most urgent climate risk because it actually causes these other ones that they list. This is actually the granddaddy. It causes everything else. For example, in the list they have biodiversity loss. The biodiversity loss comes from hothouse Earth. Organisms can't survive. They just cook. They die, and they go extinct. Freshwater declines. You can't have fresh water, which is surface water from rain runoff, right? You can't have fresh water on a hothouse Earth. Everything evaporates. Now, if you're doing rain capture, maybe you can. But is anybody doing a rain capture? No. Could we? Maybe. For some people. In some places. What about everybody? No. Who? I don't know. Are you ready? Are you set up to do rain capture so you can have fresh water in a hothouse? No. Will you be? No. And a downturn in the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, a system of ocean currents that brings heat to the northern hemisphere. Also caused by hothouse pathway. So hothouse pathway causes these other things. It is not itself a tipping point. It's not a tipping point. The hothouse Earth is the tipping point. And what they're failing to recognize here is that there's a difference between Earth system physics, such as hothouse pathway, physics, temperature, physics, laws of thermodynamics, physics, reflectivity, albedo effect, physics, okay? Versus these other things which are called climate change. Biodiversity loss, freshwater problems, AMOC, failure. That's more like climate change. Climate change is not physics. It's what comes from physics. It's the fallout, it's the secondary effects of you fucked up your physics, pal. You went through the guardrail. That's physics. Everything that happens to you on the way down is after that. Okay? You didn't stop at the guardrail. You went through because you're a numbnuts, and now, or you're drunk, or you're psychotic, which we are as a human species. We're some combination of drunk, psychotic, irresponsible, delusional, sleeping at the wheel. What is our metaphor here? What's our problem? All of the above, right? So we drove through the guardrail like a good blackout drunk would do. We drove through the guardrail, and now we're going to get whatever we get. In the case of a car, it would be, Your car is destroyed. Your head is bashed in. All your bones are broken. Okay, that's the climate change equivalent of the physics, which is runaway global heating. You can't stop physics. You can't deal with physics. When you're dealing with physics, it has you. If you step out of an airplane in flight without a parachute on, you belong to physics now. You don't belong to God and Jesus. You don't belong to good thinking and positive vibes. You don't belong to wishful anything or unicorns or anything else. You belong to physics. And physics is going to fuck you over. All right? That's physics. And the runaway hothouse Earth pathway is some physics for you, you bunch of chimps. And you're going to get whatever you get because of the laws of physics. Are we clear on this? So these guys, they are placing a problem with physics on the same level as these climate change secondary effects. Now, no one cares about biodiversity loss. No one alive really cares about that. Jane Goodall was probably the last person on Earth, and she's dead. Okay, so nobody cares since Jane Goodall died. Nobody cares about biodiversity loss. Nobody really cares about freshwater declines because it's just decline. I'll still have some, right? And nobody cares about whatever happens with this thing, this Atlantic meridional overturning circulation. Back to the sports section, okay? But of course, these aren't the only effects of climate change. See, maybe it's just the writer of this article doesn't know whether they're afoot or horseback. I mean, maybe it's just their personal problem. But it could be that the scientists don't know. It's entirely possible. I have definitely detected that a lot of scientists, and I would even say climate scientists, don't know the difference between primary effects that are grounded in physics, like hothouse Earth, primary effects, and secondary effects, secondary outcomes, like biodiversity loss. Biodiversity loss is not grounded in physics. There are harms that come from physics that cause habitat loss, that cause the extinction of animals. It is not itself a primary effect. You can't stop biodiversity loss if you can't stop the physics that's going to cause the loss. That's how it is. It's like treating symptoms instead of the cause. If someone has a 4th stage lung cancer and they have some pain in their chest and you give them an aspirin, that doesn't solve the problem with the cancer. They just don't feel it anymore because you're treating the symptoms and not the cause. And the cause of all these things is global heating, expressed eventually as runaway heating into a hothouse scenario. That's physics. That's the cause of all of this. All these bad things are going to be caused by physics. And you can't focus on biodiversity loss. If you don't want to lose biodiversity, you better stop the problem with the physics. If you don't want to lose civilizational cultural diversity, then you have to stop the problem with physics. If you don't want to lose agriculture, land and practices and food supply, then you have to stop the problems with physics. And if you don't want to lose access to supplies of fresh water, then you have to solve the problem with physics. And if you don't want to have huge parts of the earth become uninhabitable for human purposes, leading to large-scale extinctions for other animal species and plants as well, then you have to stop the problems with physics. And the problem with physics is we are burning fossil fuels, releasing the CO2 combustion gases into the atmosphere, enhancing the greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect, which is like a hothouse, right? It's right there in the words, for people. The greenhouse effect causes the planet to heat up, and eventually we get a runaway hothouse pathway, and then we're fucked. And everything I just said is physics. Although it started with burning of fossil fuels. So if you wanted to deal with the physics and solve all these other knock-on problems, then you could stop burning fossil fuels, but you won't. Because apparent according to this, you don't have to worry about this until the year 2100. This mentions Michael Mann. I have a particular problem with this guy. But of course, these aren't the only effects of climate change. There are all sorts of consequences of warming, including ice sheet collapse, coastal inundation, the increases in extreme weather. Report co-author Michael Mann, a presidential distinguished professor and the director of the Penn Center for Science, Stability, and the Media, told LiveScience in an email. Well, la-di-da. What can I say about Michael Mann? We need to move on. Global warming is... Okay. It's right here. Penn Center for Science, Science, Sustainability, and the Media. And the key term here is the media. He's a media personality. And he has to toe the line. Right? He's talking to politicians. He's talking to industrialists. He's talking to Greenpeace. He's talking to crowds in a crowded auditorium who came there for some good news. Tell us some good news, Uncle Man. Tell us a story. Tell us about, Cinderella and the Three Bears, whatever it is. Tell us a happy story. He's in the media. He did some good science climate work. He came up with what they call the hockey stick. Which is a assemblage of models and observed results and proxies that showed us that the Earth has gone into an unsustainable, well, I won't call it a nosedive because it's the opposite direction, it's up. But if you were on a plane, the same equivalent would be that you were flying level and then you went into a nosedive and now you're headed for the sharp rocks, right? And so it was equivalent to a climatological nosedive, but it's a nosedive up because it's temperature. So he did some good work. As soon as he published his work, as a climate scientist, as you do, right? He published his paper and he thought he did a good thing. He's going to get another grant and study something else. As soon as he published that paper, he started getting death threats, okay, from the Heritage Foundation and the energy companies and the automobile industry. They're like death threats, right? They're going to kill you. We're going to tear your skin off, tear your face off. Death threats from them. And so he fought them for a little while, and he finally I don't think he's done any science since then. Since he probably has. I shouldn't say that because he'll come back and say, I've published this and that. But he's spent so much time defending himself and so much time trying to explain why this is just science, folks. It's not meant to be, ideology or religion or policy or anything. I just did some science. Here I am doing my science, thinking I'm doing a pretty good job. And now you're threatening to kill me and rip my face off? What's going on here? Okay. So he spent so much time making sure people don't rip his face off that he, now, even though he's distinguished professor, presidential honor, whatever, director of the Penn Center for, he's kind of given up. I've heard him say some things that I just can't even believe that someone would say that. It's not like he's saying bad things. He's just saying wrong things. Here's more of Mann. I don't dislike the guy. I know what he's doing. He's trying to give people hope. Fine. And what am I doing? I'm trying to scare the shit out of people. Okay, Michael Mann, presidential honoree. You can go listen to him maybe. You don't have to listen to me. You can just log off of this channel, do a Google search for Michael Mann, and you'll hear some nice things. Global warming is proportional to the amount of carbon we pump into the atmosphere. Oh, you wish. Oh, baby, you wish it was proportional. Oh, fuck no. No. Therefore, to stave off the worst consequences of climate change, the focus should be on rapid decarbonization so we stabilize warming below dangerous levels. Oh, there's so much wrong with that old paragraph. Oh my God, dangerous levels. What are they? Mr. Mann, what are the dangerous levels? Could you give us a couple? Give us 100. And what? And what year do we have before we have to worry about these dangerous levels? The year 2100? That's a dangerous level, right? 80 years from now? Why don't we have the year 2100 thrown in there while we're at it? The worst consequences of climate change. What climate change? What are you talking about specifically? Could you be specific? The focus should be on rapid decarbonization So we stabilize warning below dangerous levels. Guardrails. Guardrails. We can go 100 miles an hour as long as we rapidly decarbonize. We're going to rapidly decarbonize. Rapidly decarbonize. Yeah. Sing it with me. Rapidly decarbonize. Rapidly decarbonize. Right at the guardrail. Yeah, the fuck you will. Oh, the fuck you will. You're not doing anything of the kind. You are not doing that. All he's giving you permission to do is to not do that. Because it says right here, therefore, it's just logical. Therefore, logically, to stave off the worst consequences of climate change, the focus should be on rapid decarbonization. So we stabilize warming below some dangerous level that I haven't told you what it is. You don't even know what the level is. But, someone will figure it out for you. And then someone will hold your hand and help you walk across the street so you get run over by decarbonization. What are we talking about here? This is all bullshit. This is meant to make you think, oh, so there's a plan? We're just going to rapidly decarbonize. I'm not sure what decarbonize means, and most people wouldn't. We're going to rapidly decarbonize. Is that like putting on the brakes before we go through the guardrail? If you're really thinking, you'll be thinking those thoughts, right? So we stabilize. Stabilize sounds good. We're going to stabilize. Magic stabilization vibes. We're going to stabilize warming below dangerous levels. Whatever those are, dangerous levels. The guardrail out there somewhere in the year 2100, there's a guardrail. Stabilize. Stabilize. Jesus, give me some stabilize. Can I hear a stabilize? Amen, 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 stabilize. Whatever the fuck this is. What is this shit? What is this shit? Am I the only person on earth that can see this as a crock of shit? I'm a savage. I am savage. I am absolutely savage. I know what is going on. I don't approve. And that's what you're getting from me. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like any part of it. I'm saying as much. No one's writing me a grant. No one's paying me to shut my mouth. No one's paying me to be a good boy. I can sit up here and be a goddamn raving savage. And that's what I have to do. Every year of delay locks in higher risks and costs. Name one, please. One. Just one. We can limit the damage. We can limit the damage if we act like this is an emergency. It truly is. Okay, not bad, not bad. Greta Thunberg, when she was still 10 years old and not losing her mind over Gaza, she said, if you find yourself in an emergency, you should treat it like an emergency. I don't know if she made that up or someone told that to her and she thought it was great. But yeah, okay, fine. When you find yourself in an emergency, you should treat it like an emergency. And what do you do in an emergency? You slam on the fucking brakes, you fucking pinhead. You slam on the brakes. I'm not in control. I can't see. The lights went out. I was falling asleep. I just suddenly woke up. And now all I see is a big fucking guardrail in front of me. And I don't even know what's on the other side of that guardrail. And I don't need to know what's on the other side of that guardrail. I'm in an emergency. I need to stop this car. Where are the brakes? Where's the brake pedal? Do the brakes work? I'm throwing on the brakes. That's what you do when you're in an emergency. You throw on the brakes. You don't run right up to the guardrail. Not deliberately. You don't do that. You just know, wow, that's a guardrail. I got a little bit of, it's 100 feet away. I think I can stop. You slam on the brakes. That's what you do in an emergency. We can limit the damage if we act like this is an emergency. I don't know. No, I will say right up front, you cannot limit the damage. You cannot limit the damage. We are going to get a lot of damage. We won't be able to limit any of it. We are in the hands of physics. Physics is going to damage us. Can we limit that? No. Can we escape it? Maybe. You see the distinction? You're not limiting the damage. You're outrunning it. And if you're filthy rich, that's a lot easier for you to do. Elon Musk is planning on rapturing his fat butt to Mars. That's how he's going to outrun climate change. That's how he's going to outrun all these planetary tipping points. He's going to be on Mars with this big fucking telescope bigger than his dick, watching the rest of us eat each other from Mars. There is still time to act because we haven't yet reached levels of warming where the consequences are unmanageable. How the fuck do you know that? Data, please? How do you know for a fact that you haven't reached these levels? You don't know anything. You got no data because it's unknown. We don't know. And that's why these people are constantly surprised when something happens, like the Larsen A and B ice sheets fell apart. That was a big surprise. Like when the AMARC started to shut down a couple of years ago. That caught them by surprise. Like when we had record ocean temperatures in 2023. They don't know what to make of that. All I ever see from these people is everything that was supposed to happen by the year 2100 is happening, next week. So no, I don't want to hear about how things are still manageable and we have to do something before things become unmanageable. You're not managing fuck all. You're not managing anything, pal. You're just not doing it. You're in the thick of it and you're going down the river like the rest of us. There are some reasons to be hopeful. Not if you're listening to me. Some nations have successfully ended coal use. Some. Probably some tiny ones that probably didn't use much coal to begin with. And cut methane leaks. Leaks. Methane leaks. Well, cutting methane leaks. That's a good thing, right? Ripple said the UK, Ireland, Switzerland, Norway, and several other European countries no longer have coal in their electricity mix. Blech. The European Union and Nigeria have also made tangible progress in cutting methane emissions. Tangible progress. Tangible. That can mean anything they want. A 10% reduction in methane emissions. 10%. That's tangible. It's measurable, so it's tangible. It's not imaginary, it's measurable, so it's tangible. Deforestation rates in the Amazon have dropped sharply under new leadership. They had an election. Renewable energy capacity keeps setting records, and electric vehicle sales are climbing. And I think that's the end of the article. First comment, more pseudoscience. For all I know, this person's a climate denier, but it's not pseudoscience. It's happy talk. I'm sure they did real science. You can go to the original article, right, on bioscience, and there's probably real science. There's charts, numbers, references, citations. Just looking at fires and hot days is enough. I'm going to highlight this. Just looking at fires and hot days is enough to tell me that this report is false. It's not false. It's misleading. Is that the same thing? I think false is when you deliberately lie. Black is white. Misleading is black is a color and white is a color. So they're the same. That's misleading. See the difference? See what I just did there? Black is white. That's false. Black is a color and white is a color. So they're the same. Misleading. See how quickly I did that? Aren't I a clever son of a bitch? Worse, fires have existed well before 1900, and we wouldn't have so many fires now if woodlands were properly managed. Okay, this is denialist crap, but it's kind of fun to read comments. Did Al Gore co-author this article? Oh yeah, that's a denialist. Willie is a denialist. Mad Sadusky. Much the same graphs Ripple published in 2019 in Bioscience under the article World Scientists Warning. Okay, yeah, even my wife pointed that out. This is a continuation of some work they did in 2019, though I think it was published in like 2022 or 2023. It's okay. It's fine to recycle things. Also, scientists will come back and review their work. So they did something 3 years ago, and they'll come back and they'll do an update. So that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. To say that this is the same work he did in 2019, that is not pejorative. And given the problems that we're having with the global climate and all the problems of getting ourselves off of fossil fuels, reviewing your work is not a bad thing. For example, there was a warning to scientists, maybe it's even the same one, that was kind of a riff on the work done in the early 70s on limits to growth. So they came back after X number of years, decades, and they said, okay, let's re-examine the limits to growth work that was done in the 70s. Oh, look, it's still accurate. 50 years later, they're still on glide path. All the predictions they made are either coming true or have already come true. And, you know, their models were good. And so we're reviewing the limits to growth models. World 3, I think is what it was called, World 3. Tells you what they're after. World 3 model, it still applies. Nothing in current observations tells us that the World 3 was wrong. It's just a model, of course. It's not predicting anything. It has no predictive power, but it has suggestive power. We look at World 3 done in the early 70s, and it's still not bad. 50 years later, looks pretty good. And so that was a study. Is that wrong? Oh, that was published in the 1970s. Yeah, that's old work. They're just reviewing old work. We can't. That's not a new paper. They shouldn't get credit for that. Yes, they should. Because they came along and said, look, World 3, the model, looking good, on glide path. And so you want to go back and look at the World 3 model and the outcome of that because, hey, maybe this thing is predictive. Wouldn't that be useful? Wouldn't that be useful if 50 years later it's still largely correct? Because it is predictive. Are the reaction, are what we're seeing observations, are they still in alignment with the model? Yeah. What else does the model say? Don't you want to know what the model says about the future? You should, because it's right there. Go back and read the limits to growth. Go look at the World 3 model output. It's right there. It's been there for 50 years. Check it out. Someone said, let's look at it again. They published the paper. It doesn't matter that it was done in the 70s. It's good to review. So I've torn this paper to pieces. Some of what I don't like about this paper might actually be due to the author of LiveScience, Sasha Pare. Sasha sounds like Slavic, so Sasha could be Russian, German, possibly German. Journalists can take editorial license with some things, and maybe not deliberately, but yeah. Remember, this is popular science. So, and in the interest of accessibility, which I think is their excuse, to simplify, interpret, and if they're good journalists and they do a good job and they don't change the meaning of things, but they just simplify the meaning of things to make it more accessible, then it's fine. But sometimes journalists just get it wrong. Sometimes a journalist will say, and this is what the scientist meant, and if the scientist comes back and looks at the article and say, that's not what I meant, then they have to change it, right? Did Michael Mann and Mike Ripple get to review this article before it was published? I think that they probably did. So there's probably some confidence that the author of this article, which is the journalist, not a scientist, not that I know of, this journalist did a decent job. So we'll just let that go. Therefore, most of what's in here is probably what they wanted to say. This is actually the takeaway. They put it in the beginning. Let's just go back and take a quick look at this. Without deep cuts to emissions, not real clear here what that means. I'll clarify for you. There's a chance Earth could, what percentage of a chance? A good chance? A poor chance? Why are we having this discussion if it's a poor chance? So it must be a good chance, right? Could embark on a dangerous hothouse trajectory to complete climate chaos. So let's just assume, since that's the first line in the article, that the people who reviewed this article for accuracy read that and didn't have a problem. If this was buried deep inside around quotes or something like that, maybe the reviewers might miss it. But let's say that this is the first article, it's the first line in the article, and the reviewers reviewing this article for accuracy before it was published, they saw this first line and they were like, okay, that's fine, you can say that. I want to take, this is a very common trope. This is a very common trope, okay? This entire sentence means nothing. It means nothing. If you gave this to a politician, they would like, meh, okay. If you gave this to an economist, they would like, okay, whatever. Joe Sixpack on the streets would be like, wouldn't understand any of this. And even climate scientists would look at that and say, well, okay, fine. You want to say that, that's okay. And then they go back to doing their own work. And this sentence doesn't tell anybody what to do. It doesn't tell anybody that you're in trouble. It doesn't tell anybody that they need to get on a lifeboat and get off the Titanic. This sentence doesn't tell anybody that they're about to die. This sentence doesn't tell anybody that their supply chains for food, water, and shelter, and clothing and medicine are all on the chopping block. It's just a sentence that just says, without deep cuts to emissions, whatever those are, there's a chance, not defined, that Earth could embark on a dangerous to who, hothouse trajectory, whatever that is, to complete climate chaos. Climate chaos. I don't know what climate chaos is. Climate chaos. It rhymes. Climate chaos. You could make a song, climate chaos. You could do some rap to that, but climate chaos, what is that? Oh, I know. It means wonky weather. Weather's always wonky. They can't even predict the weather more than 3 days out, okay? Climate chaos. Why? What are you talking about? This sentence says absolutely nothing. You think it does, but it doesn't tell you anything. Now, I could reword this sentence so that it tells you exactly what you should be worried about and exactly what you have to do. Okay? Shall I do that? I'm going to reword this first sentence, and then we'll contrast the two. Or you can contrast the two if you want to or not. I don't really care what you do. Without complete cuts in fossil fuel consumption, Earth will become an uninhabitable hothouse, leading to a massive human fatality event. Now, I don't have any more data than these guys have. But whoever wrote this sentence made editorial decisions on what to focus on. Instead of cutting emissions, which is nebulous, emissions of what? Cutting them how? Who's going to cut them? I said we must stop burning fossil fuels. And that's everyone. All the fossil fuels. I don't even have to define them. You can look them up. They are coal, oil, crude oil, and natural gas. We must stop burning all fossil fuels. Without a complete halt in the burning of fossil fuels, Earth will become an uninhabitable hothouse, because a hothouse is uninhabitable. A 10 degrees C trajectory of the increase of the planet Earth on average. Again, it's on average. Some places are going to get 20. All right? Those are probably going to be the places where you live. 20 degrees C, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, round figures, okay? 20 degrees C, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, increase in temperatures. Kill you, dead. You will be dead. 1 week. 1 week of temperatures, 40 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than what you're used to on average, will kill you. Everyone you know, everyone you've ever spoken to, everything you do, every animal you own, all your neighbors, all your children, all your friends, everybody who lives near you. 40 degrees Fahrenheit for 1 week. To go from 90 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer to 130 for a week kills everybody. Kills everybody. The people who would survive that would number in the dozens. Now, these are the guys talking about the hothouse Earth. David Wallace Wells wrote a book. It was a while back, but I thought even at the time it was pretty prescient. David Wallace Wells, a journalist for the Atlantic magazine, wrote what was really at the time a very daring expose of what would happen to the Earth. And he called it Uninhabitable Earth. And he was talking about hothouse Earth. People have been talking about hothouse Earth, and they kind of stopped talking about it because it's too fucking dangerous and scary. They stopped doing that. These guys are bringing the They're really bringing the word back into circulation, okay? So let's let them do that. Let's celebrate that we have words. We're able to now talk about words. And let's talk about the hothouse Earth, which David Wallace Wells wrote about 10, 12 years ago. He was about the time of the Paris Climate Accords, maybe just after, so about 10 years ago. He wrote Uninhabitable Earth. And it's not a long article. And in fact, I think, did we get a version of it, an audiobook? It might have even been on YouTube as someone read the book. He may have read the book. So it's available. I think he was pretty open with it. It's available at Uninhabitable Earth by David Wallace Wells. And he was talking about Hothouse Earth. And in Hothouse Earth, basically, nobody survives. And there is some scientific consensus around that. So if you want to avoid a massive fatality event, a die-off if you prefer, then you have to cut deep cuts to emissions. And the emissions we're talking about are CO2 emissions, which come from the burning of fossil fuels. And there's lots of ways we burn fossil fuels, right? In our cars, in our planes, but also in our power plants, in our plastics manufacturing, smelting metals, making cement for concrete, paving roads, asphalt for paving roads. There's countless ways we use fossil fuels. And you look at your civilization. Do you like your paved roads? Do you like your electric car? Okay, all that's fossil fuels. Someone's here. I should stop. Anyway, to cut emissions of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which is bad. You don't want that. You don't want carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. To cut emissions of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, you must stop burning fossil fuels. Now, they're saying cut emissions. That's nebulous. You must cut emissions. Well, they say deep cuts to emissions, but what's deep cuts? 10%? This is a definition. Give us a number. 90%? Oh, that sounds pretty deep to me. Well, no. We can't have that. 10% would be good. 5% annually for several years. 5% per decade. Those are deep cuts, okay? Well, if you don't deep cut to zero being the actual number, your fossil fuel consumption, you're fucked. We are already on our way to Hothouse Earth. We may be seeing some symptoms of that already. Hurricane Melissa. Data point, okay? We may be seeing some symptoms of this already. Probably are. I think many people would agree. And that's probably why this paper came out, because they're worried. Why would they be worried? I don't know. Maybe they're just worry warts, right? I'm not a worry wart. I'm just worried. I have no anxieties about any of this stuff. I'm just seeing what's happening. I'm like, oh, wow. We're kind of fucked. And, if you're going to be fucked, you should talk about it. We're in trouble. We're in big trouble. My working assumption these days is that 999 out of 1,000 of us are going to die, leaving 8 million people left on Earth. 8 million. That's still a lot of people. That's more people than there are elephants, right? We don't have 8 million elephants. We don't have 8 million tigers. We don't have 8 million of anything. So a 99.9% die-off, 999 out of 1,000, same thing, of humans still leaves a boatload of humans. And who would those people be? Oh, the usual gang of idiots. Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, the Trump family, right? Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, you know what I'm talking about, among the 8 million. And then, thrown in there also is the few individuals who are able to get their shit wired up tight so that they can survive the worst of Hothouse Earth. How do they do that? I don't know. I wrote the book. It was 100 Days. Link in the description. Amazon published. You can read it if you want to. You don't have to. It's not gonna change your problem. You still got your problem. It's about how you end up in the 8 million. Okay, the book is about how a bunch of people who don't own their own satellite networks and have a station on Mars, how anybody who's not in that bunch, doesn't have a private jet, doesn't have a private island, doesn't have a chalet in 4 different European states, how someone who's not in that group survives the end of civilization. That's what it's about. And they do it in 100 days. And even at the end of 100 days, they realize, oh my God, we've barely scratched the surface. And are we going to survive another 100 days? How many times do we have to do this? And the answer is you have to do it 100 times. You have to survive 100 days 100 times. Round figures, right? Yeah, I mean, it works. It's easy to remember. You have to survive for 100 days 100 times. And if you do that, you do the math, that's about 27 years. You have to be in survival mode, constantly scrambling to feed yourself and find water and clothing and shelter for 27 years. It's generational change. Are you going to do that? No. Is anyone going to do that? Maybe. Maybe. And if you know that that's the work, you might. And that's why I wrote the book. Before you read the book, you don't know what to do. You don't even know that it's an issue. After you read the book, you come away thinking, well, okay, that didn't sound off the wall. Without deep cuts to emissions, there's a chance Earth could embark on a dangerous hothouse trajectory to complete climate chaos. Means nothing. My analysis of this paper means everything. Everything you need to know that they were afraid to say, I have said. I have said. And whereas down here they say, oh, your electric car, that's part of the solution. I'll tell you, no, it's not. It's manufactured. And you can only manage manufacturing of anything at all. Wind-up toys, disposable razors, anything. You can only manufacture things if you have fossil fuels. You can't make an electric car using electricity. Well, the factory is full of robots. They run on electricity. I'm not talking about the robots. I'm talking about the supply chains. You can't manufacture rubber tires with electricity. Well, there must be some way. No. You can't manage computer circuits. You can't manufacture computer circuits and screens and sensors using electricity. There's real manufacturing in there. Some of this stuff contains rare earths, right? We're always talking about rare earths. Where do those come from? Well, that's heavy industry. Go look it up. Heavy industry. It starts with dynamite and huge dump trucks hauling dirt away. That's how you start making rare earths for all of your magnets and your circuit boards and your everything else. You have to have all this equipment out in the field blowing up mountaintops. So you can't make rare earths without fossil fuels. And because you can't have rare earths without fossil fuels, well, then you can't have permanent magnets. And because you can't have a permanent magnet, you can't have a DC motor. And because you can't have a DC motor, you can't have an electric car. Did I miss anything? All right, I'm done with this. I have been mean to these people. I'm a savage. I'm an asshole. I know what I am mostly is I'm scared. All right? I'm scared. I don't think we're going to turn the corner. I think I'm going to be left trying to form a village all by myself. I think I'm going to have to do some goddamn work. Why can't these people do some work? Why do I have to do everything? I'm tired of doing everything. Now I have to go outside and do something. Yes, I have a lot of projects actually on the deck today. They're not little projects. They're not, spreading leaves on the garden, digging a post hole, something like that. Man, my projects are enormous. I own a dump truck. My projects are so big. And right now it's full of scrap wood. I don't even know where I got most of it. Oh, yeah. Where did I get that? Oh, yeah, that's right. We took the ceiling. We took the ceiling out of, part of the ceiling out of the house because I put in skylights, so we had to take out part of the ceiling. Why would you take out your ceiling? Well, because I'm a fucking savage, okay? I got plans. Don't worry about the plans. I got plans. Now we have skylights. And I have a truck full of demolished drywall and lumber and shit like that. So now I have to go to the dump. I come back with gravel. And the gravel helps me finish my basement. Yes, I'm working on a basement. The basement is where I avoid the heat. The basement is where I avoid the fallout from the Third World War. Read the book. Read the book. It was 100 days available on Amazon. Link in the description. And while we're talking about that, leave a like on the video. And hey, you may as well subscribe because I come back here once in a while and scare the shit out of you, and you're here for that, right? You're here for that. Good. You should be, because you need to be scared. And I don't enjoy this. This is a public service. I'm doing this as a public service, scaring the shit out of people. Wow. What a savage. Yeah, I admit to that. My solar isn't working. I guess it's because it's been so cloudy. It's not cloudy right now. It is working, but it's not generating enough electricity. And this is a problem with alternative energy, is that it's not generating enough electricity to charge the batteries. So I'm having to buy electricity today. I'll probably buy electricity for maybe 6 hours, and then the batteries will be healthy again, because I use part of the electricity to charge the batteries. I don't like them being flat. So it'll charge up the batteries. They probably went flat sometime during the night. We have pretty heavy loads. This is a modern house, and we got water heaters and everything else. And so the loads are pretty high, even though we have heat pump water heaters, which are extremely expensive, but very frugal electricity. But if it's cloudy every day for 2 or 3 days, and by the end of that time, you've depleted your batteries and not enough solar power. And so we're now using the electric utility, as a backup. Yeah, we're off grid. We use the electric utility as a backup. It works fine. It's completely transparent. I didn't even know we were buying electricity until I checked my control panel. It's like, oh, you're buying electricity. Okay, that's fine. And then it'll turn itself off at some point. It'll say, yeah, the batteries are healthy. We're not going to do this anymore. So I'm standing here looking at, wait, should I show you? How about this? See this is how it works, people. Wow, isn't that confusing? Red, of course, is scary because you're buying. It's going to cost you money, but it costs me almost nothing. Almost nothing. During the summer, I don't buy at all. I don't buy for like 10 months out of the year. And part of the reason I'm buying is I actually had to take off 2 whole strings. That's 6 panels off the roof because I was working on the roof. So this is a reminder. I need to get back up there and get those back on the roof. I've got other things to do, though. I've got this basement to finish. I don't like the water coming into the basement. I got to finish the basement. And then I'll put the solar panels on. And in the meantime, I may be buying some electricity once in a while. It's fine. I'll get those panels back up there, and then they'll be working for me. And for now, I don't really care. I'll put up with it. It'll be an expense, but it's a tiny expense, and I don't really care. You see how it adjusts? The actual capacity of the system is about 7 kilowatts, but it isn't now because I've got 2 strings down. So the capacity might be closer to 5.5. So when you see it running at 5.5 kilowatts, that's about capacity right now. Normally it's 7. And when you're hitting 7, the batteries are really happy. They really love that. This is a no compromise off-grid solar with a huge battery array, and it works completely transparently 999 days out of 100. Never touch it. Just monitor it like I'm doing now. So projects, making work for myself, and keeps me busy. Like and subscribe, buy the book. And even if you don't do those things, promise me, you won't die. Right? Can we agree? No dying allowed.